Hello everyone. In the subject World Englishes, we will discuss today English both globalizing and nativizing. So how English became a global language, the process of globalization, and how English became a native language of non-native countries. This process is called nativization. So let's learn these both concepts in detail. English is spoken almost everywhere. So everywhere it means that in all continents of the world or in every country English is spoken. So somewhere like more people will speak English and somewhere less people will speak English. So it differs in degree, but it is spoken and it is understood almost everywhere. People speak it differently everywhere, right? It is spoken everywhere, but they will speak differently. If you notice, the people of India, they will speak English differently than the people of Pakistan. And if you notice, the people of New Zealand, they will speak English in a different way than the people of America, and so on. So what are the causes and what leads these differences? We will discuss in this lecture. Differences. People use strange words. For example, if you visit UK or you visit America or you visit Australia, New Zealand, Canada, India, anywhere in the world, and there people speak English. So you will find that they will use strange words, the words that you haven't heard before, right? And you will notice that they will pronounce even familiar words differently. For example, that if you go to UK, so you will find that they will pronounce certain words which are different the way you pronounce. And if you go to America, so you will notice that they will pronounce certain words then the way you pronounce them. So it means that the pronunciation of these words would be different than you, the way you pronounce. They will construct sentences different than you, right? So there will be differences in vocabulary, there will be differences in pronunciation, and there will be differences in syntactic structure. So it means that we don't have a single English now. It leads to the concept of Englishes, right? World Englishes. So the English of America is different than the English of UK, and the English of UK is different than the English of India, and the English of India is different than the English of Pakistan. So this is the cause that why do we have strange words in different countries? Why do we have different pronunciation even of familiar words? And why do we have a strange or a different syntactic structure than your own one? So it means that we don't have a single English now, right? We have world Englishes. Now, English in different shapes. Why people speak differently than us? This is a question. And why we don't understand them completely in the beginning, right? You go somewhere and you won't understand the people when they speak English completely at the beginning. And when you spend there some time, right? Like a few months or a few years, so gradually you would be familiar with them and then you would understand people completely. So what are the causes, right? That in the beginning you don't understand, and when you spend time then you understand, right? And why people speak differently than us? The concept it leads to that we don't have a single English. So this is the answer here, that because English is no more a single language. It comes with different shapes and variety. That's why that in everywhere people speak differently. That's why we confront strange words. That's why we have different pronunciation of words, of familiar words. That's why we have different syntactic structures, that we have no single English now. Right? We can't say that the English of America is standard than the English of India or Pakistan, or the English of England is a standard one than the English of America, right? So there is no prestigious dialect. Every English is standard one for its own country, right? So it leads to the idea of different Englishes. We have different Englishes. English is the world leading language. This is the process of globalization, that how English became a global language. It is used in all continents, right? English is spoken in all continents of the world. More than 100 countries, it is used as a second language, right? More than 100 countries. It is used as a second language. It is perhaps because of colonization, right? That in the 19th century and 20th century, England made colonies in most part of the world. In Asia, in Africa, in Europe, in North America, in South America. So that's why this English became a second language of these countries now. So it has a very important internal function now. It is used in education, it is used in business, it is used in interviews, it is, you see that newspapers are printed in English, and English is taught as a compulsory subject till second year, and even till, like, we don't have no BA system in most countries now, but it is taught even till 14th grade as a compulsory subject, right? It is used in courts, it is used in offices, and it is used in communication, and people get higher education in English, and it's like a kind of gateway to the jobs. So it has a very important internal function of what? Of English, where it is used as a second language in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, and like in some African countries like Nigeria, and like, so these countries also English is used as a second language. It is used in politics, media, education, and technology. So this is the internal function of English, where it is used as a second language. This is the process of globalization, how English became a global language, right? So it is used as a lingua franca in communication, right? If you go somewhere to the country where you don't understand Arabic language, you don't understand French language, you don't understand Spanish language, you don't understand Italian language, so you don't understand the language of that country, and you go as a tourist or for some business purpose, right? So their English will function as a lingua franca, right? And because people will understand English here, if not completely, to some extent they will understand, and you can communicate them, right? So in every country we have a language that is a lingua franca. Like in Pakistan, we have Urdu. There's a lingua franca. If you go to Sindh, if you go to Punjab, you don't understand Punjabi, you don't understand Sindhi, you don't understand Balochi, so you speak in Urdu. So Urdu connects the people of all provinces of Pakistan in a similar way that English connects people in the world. So it is used as a lingua franca in communication, business, and tourism, etc. Recent estimation, more than 2 billion speakers of English are there in the world. So remember that English is the only language in the world which has more non-native speakers than native. So if someone asks you a question that which country or which language has the most native speaker, answer should be Chinese. And which language has the most non-native speakers, answer should be English, right? In developing countries, people learn English as a primary gateway of receiving jobs, income, and to have a better life. So most of developing countries are those where English is used as a second language, right? Or which were made colonies of the Great Britain in 19th and 20th century. So in these countries, English is used as a gateway of receiving jobs. If you know English, so you would have a better opportunity to receive a job, or to have a good interview, right? Or to have a better income facilities, to have a better life compared to those who do not know English well, right? So English is considered like a visa, like to the job, right? Now, this was the process of globalization, that how English became a global language. And the causes of the English as a global language was in 19th and 20th century, when the Great Britain made colonies most part of the world, right? Or in most countries or every continent, they made colonies, right? And then we see that in 20th century, the emergence of America as an economic power, right? Okay, or military power. So now we will discuss nativization of English. At the same time, however, English has become localized and indigenized in a great many different countries. It fulfills important local function. In doing so, it has developed local forms and characteristics. It developed, right, locally, and there was the influence of local culture, local tradition, or English has got some local characteristics, right? So that not infrequently people enjoy using it in their own way. So the people of Pakistan will use English in their own way, and the people of India will use English in their own way. English became localized. So first English became a global language, right? It arrived to different parts of the world, and this arrival of English in different parts of the world in the 19th and 20th century is due to colonization. Great Britain had made colonies in different parts of the world, and in this way English spread. And the second cause of the spread of English or English became a global language, that in the second half of 20th century, when the emergence of America as an economic power and superpower also spread English across the world, right? Now English became a global language and people use it for trade, business, communication, and it functions as a lingua franca, right? So that was globalization of English. So first English became a global language, different parts of the world, and then later on English, we have another process that is called nativization, and there is the color of local or local color, or you can say that the color of culture, right? Or you can say that people use it in their own way. So nativization of English. At the same time, however, English has become localized and indigenized in a great many different countries. It fulfills important local function. In doing so, it has developed local forms and characteristics. Now we have local forms of English, right? Our English has local characteristic. So that not infrequently people enjoy using it in their own way. People use English in their own way. In many places, local ways of speaking English have become a new home dialect, which, like all local dialects, we have local dialects. English also became a local dialect. Is used to express regional pride, a sense of belonging to a place, which finds expression through local culture, including language forms. Right? So there is the influence of local culture, local tradition, right? Norms and values. And we can see this local touch of also in English language. Furthermore, in many countries of Africa and Asia where English was introduced just 1 or 2 centuries ago, when these countries were made the colonies of Great Britain, there are now indigenous children who grow up speaking English as their first or most important, most frequently used language. So these children now use English as their first language or the most important language. And even they are able to speak English better than their parents' language or their grandparents' language. And some of them are not even able to speak the indigenous language of their parents and grandparents any longer. They forgot to use the language of their parents and grandparents. So in this way that English became a native language for these young children. Those countries, we can summarize that those countries which were made the colonies of Great Britain a century or 2 centuries ago, and the children which are born there now, they speak English and they speak English better than their parents' language, right? So English became now their native language. And we can find now like the local touch, the culture of these local people, right? So it's like a kind of local, English became a local dialect for these people now. One really interesting aspect about all of this is that this indigenization and nativization process of English in many countries, frequently former colonies in the Great Britain Empire. So these countries where English is used as a native language by young children now, these countries were the colonies of Great Britain, is a product of the very recent past and not primarily of their colonial heritage of centuries ago, where these young children, they use English as their native language. It's like a recent phenomenon, not like a colonial heritage of centuries ago. So it is only for the last few decades, quite a while after independence in many cases, when these countries got independence from Great Britain, that English has made such inroads in the local culture. Again, this should come as a surprise to an outsider observer. Now, after they got independence, now the young children, they tried to speak English as their native language, and they have given it a touch of local culture. English was a language of the colonial power. As we know, when these colonial power, they came to Africa, Asia, Europe, and different parts of the world. So they also brought themselves English language. So it's the language of colonial power. The settlers and expatriate rulers, right? The settlers who settle in these countries, different part of the world, and the expatriates rulers, sometimes perceived as a oppressors. So these people are sometimes considered as oppressors because they oppressed the local people. So once they were gone, wouldn't it have been natural for a newly independent countries to breathe deeply and forget about the days of lack of freedom? They've gone here. It's a question to do away with all of the colonial heritage, including their language. It's a question. Once these colonial power, okay, or these masters had gone away from here, isn't it good, okay, with the independence that these countries should forget, like the olden days, the lack of freedom, right? And to do away with all colonial heritage, and they should also forget about their language. But they haven't forgot their language because the England or the Great Britain had left legacy, okay? Still, after the independence, these countries, these poor countries, okay, which were made colonies of Great Britain, they had nothing. People had nothing to survive. Again, they were looking forward towards their master, right? And they learned their language because they thought that if they know English, so they would get better jobs, right? They would have a better lifestyle. They would have better opportunities. So you see that these people were helpless or they were hopeless again, okay, to gain their language. So, but interestingly enough, quite the contrary has happened. These people haven't forgot the colonial heritage because these colonial power, they gone from here, right? But people couldn't leave their language. People still are learning their language. Fine, they are dependable on them. In many countries, English has become embraced, appreciated, transformed, made or on. So they consider that this is their own language. And in fact, this issue of the ownership of English is a very much a topic of current debate and has even had headlines in international journalism. For example, on March 7, 2005, Newsweek had a cover page and story entitled "Who Owns English?" English is the language of Indian, English is the language of Britain, English is the language of America. Whose language English is? Who owns English? Non-native speakers are transforming the global language. What has happened here, right? So these people are transforming the English language, and now every country has their own English, right? So this was all about that how English became a global language and how it became a native language of those countries where people are not native speaker of English.